So here is my monster slide. I just want to introduce the workshop first of all. I'm calling it location, location, location because as a reference to that, where is the best place to put a restaurant type thing. It's just a matter of location, but it's also because as I go through it, you'll find that it's finding the exact location that's really interesting and that makes working with mapping tools fun for students and was fun for me. And it's basically not just for social sciences, it's the idea that mapping tools can be used in various subjects. Bottom right, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Paul Rombo. I'm a educational consultant at Learn in Social Sciences, but also in implementing the digital competency in schools. So this works in both regards. I also am a former English teacher. That's my interest in mapping in ELA as well. And I've lived all in the north as well. So we're going to be talking about that as well. Um, Now, Cartograf is one of several maps. So top right, Cartograf is the one that Learn and Reci built about 10 or more years ago. And Parks Canada, actually. It was a joint venture and they stepped out after a couple of years. And what I'm going to show in this webinar is basically can be done in Google My Maps and Google Earth. And I'll be referring to each of these now and then to note differences. I'm also going to be referring to a couple other interesting sites, one called Native Land Digital, which helps to locate Indigenous languages. And there's several others. There's Scribble Maps. There's actually a Scribble Maps here, but I didn't mention it in this list. Argus is not a free map, but you can often find maps there. And there's many, many mapping tools. But the advantage of Cartograf is that it's learn controlled, learn run, and you don't need a special Google account for it. You don't need a Microsoft account. Anybody can sign up. You can even make up a name whenever. All the management to Cartograf is in the teacher's hands. They have the students sign up and they handle it on their own, and it's worked really well that way. Now, I did mention down on my introduction that I'm an educational consultant. The little reference here is to a workshop that I did on motivation at LCQ. The idea was that to motivate students, you got to have the classroom flowing, changing pace all the time. It has to be designed universally with flexibility and different ways of engaging students, different ways of representing. And that intrinsic motivation was the main act. I kind of went backwards in that workshop to Act One, and Cartograf is a lot to do with intrinsic motivation. And finally, I'm also going to reflect on a little bit of how AI fits in this, because AI can help in mapping scenarios, but you cannot be an AI mapping. The students are in the room mapping. And so the role of AI is removed from the mapping experience directly, but it can be involved in different capacities. So I put this little search, and I thought this was kind of funny because I think of AI as a collaborative venture with a bunch of different AIs working together. And I was imagining and yourself trying to produce and Cartograf trying to get somewhere. So I put it AI asked AI for an image of Artemis and the moon going around the moon, and I meant the spaceship, and that's what it gave me. So it's like kind of my joke, the Artemis, the Greek god. So that image will change in the other slides to an actual representation of the moon vessel. So before I get into Cartograf, very briefly, I'm going to mention that the program competencies are involved in any activity in class, right? In in social sciences, territory and location is very obvious. In geography, you're understanding a territory, you're interpreting an issue in a territory. You're talking about global citizenship, so you need to relate your territory to the world. And it's similar in the history subjects. There's the phenomenon that's happening in a place. You're interpreting how that place changes, and geography is actually part of the key features in those competencies. And in cycle two as well. The geographic element is part of how you characterize a period It's to do with location and time. So it becomes more obvious when we talk about the intellectual operations. But I'll just mention that other program competencies and connections, I'm not an expert in those, so I'm going to refer to them indirectly through another sort of another framework, if you will. But in social sciences, it's more obvious. You know, you have characterize a territory, situate a territory for geography. Obviously, situate in space in is something great for mapping. And but there are ways to situate in time by having several maps compare to each other. Um, and you know, there's as I mentioned some of the learning activities, I'm going to mention some of the other intellectual operations, like connections between facts is involved in some, and obviously consequences are involved in others. And I'll try to mention them, but I didn't tag them as I go through because I'm going to be working through another framework, which I'll introduce shortly. Obviously, the digital competency is going to be involved because you're working with a digital tool. Some are more obvious than others. You know, obviously, your ability technologique, the central one, is involved, and you're working with numerique, digital environments. What's not so obvious is that you know you're going to have to be thinking critical about what you're mapping and where you're mapping it, and the sources obviously that you're using to map things, and you're producing content, you're producing content, so you are producing a map and you're using that map to communicate and to collaborate. And those are maybe not as obvious, but you can, in the sense that, you know, you see the mapping tool, it's usually done individually, but part of the scenario is for the student to present their map, present their logic for it. And there are built-in ways to collaborate with other students so that you can work with two maps in the same space. So I'm not going to be mentioning these as much. They will come into play if it comes up. Feel free to mention them, or I may do. But what really interests me is this. What really interests me is the idea that when students are involved in mapping something, they're doing it their own way. They're they're appropriating their knowledge for themselves. There's no two students that will do it exactly the same way. But you can see the students are using it, they're focused, and I have teachers who come back to Cartograf again, the same teachers again and again and again because they have this experience. This quote on the right is from an article about AI on École Branchée. The link will be there in the presentation. But basically, it's talking about how the great thing about AI is that you can take content and you can personalize it, but you're not individualizing it for that student. You're making the same contents. They still have to do the same shared goal, but they have different supports and different entry points. You can use AI to change things up so that they have different entry points. And to me, cartograph and mapping is like that already. As soon as you have to put something on a map, you have a different entry points in terms of all kinds of things, scale and so on. So what is cartograph? Well, like I said, it's one of many mapping tools. This is from the front page. It's an open source, interactive, collaborative mapping and drawing application. It does have drawing tools in it as well. Anybody can register for it. And there are certain technical skills that are available in the tutorials on the help page. Basically, how to create a map, how to draw lines and shapes on a map, how to add points on a map, and in those points, put documents. And then we're not going to have a lot of time, but I'll mention sharing and collaborating, how to use what we call a share code. Anyone can sign up and do it. And the reason why I wanted to put this on is because I'm going to probably have times to show a demo quickly, but in reality, I have several situations where teachers will say, students, go home, do it, and come back, and then they share it and talk about it in school. Like students are able to figure it out themselves. It's very simple. And I'll show you an example of a secondary class, secondary three, where the teacher never taught it in class at all, and they did all the homework at home, and they produced a ton of stuff. So basically, you just click and register. Anybody can register. There's a secret code called it says you have to write "learn to map" in there. It's like a passcode or something like a to prevent robots, and anybody can sign up, and you can put in any email or any username, so students can do it that way. So this is where I'm going with this. This is a sort of a structure that I saw recently, a couple weeks ago. The RISD did a webinar on mapping, and they introduced these procedural, what they call procedural concepts. And I thought this was a good framework to use in this presentation as well, focusing more on Cartograf. So their presentation stressed in the first sort of 20 minutes, stressed how it can be used in different subjects. And I've got a lot of different examples to show that are on Cartograf. So I wanted to use this structure, location, scale, development, and territory. And it's different for every subject. So to give you a sort of a reference point, in social sciences, location, where the territory or issue is located, why there but not somewhere else could be some of the questions you might answer. Scale, at what scale are my observations? Are you talking a local, regional, national, or global? And development. How has humanity transformed the territory? What needs do the developments meet? So there is an involvement of human action. Happens a lot in geography. It happens in all the other subjects too, and I'll focus in on science for that one as well. And territory, the region, the borders. What are the constraints of that area, that environment, that place in the world, its resources, and what are the sort of major axes that dominate that divide the territory. These are all sort of things that can happen in all the subject areas, and this is how it's described, or it could be described in social sciences. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each one of these with different examples. For example, scale. I will present that. I'll show you an example from Cartograf, a couple examples to do with scale. Oh, is there a sound in this? I didn't want a sound. Anyway, I'm going to stop it in 2 seconds. This is a typical example of an animation that has to do with scale. And I thought it was interesting because it starts very small and zooms out, and you know that where it's going to keep going and going and going until it gets to space, right? And I happened to find one of an area that I wanted to focus on as that I have an example for in Cartograf to give you an idea of scale in social sciences. So, and this is it. So this is the first time you've seen a map in Cartograf, and I'm going to show you the example scenario in order to show scale. So you can already see that this is an area of the world, and the students need to understand what the scale is and work with the scale. So now I'm jumping to Cartograf. So this is your first look at the application. And I'm going to go inside this map to show what it's like. So basically there's a bunch of sample scenarios on the home page. There's a bunch of sample scenarios. This is the first one I'm going to introduce. This is for secondary cycle 1 on sedentarization. This page serves as an instructional page. It gives me something to link to, but it's not the actual map. I'm going to jump into the map in a second. But basically, it's a scenario for students. The scenario briefly is that they read about the agricultural revolution. They do that in these icons. There's some information there. They look at what the different communities and find out what life was like there. And then what they're going to do in this line here is they're going to copy the map so that they get all that information once they've done these different activities. And they can write them in different locations and respond to them. They're going to copy the map, and then they're going to use the map to draw on the map additional information. In this case, it's who were they trading with, what were the lines of trade. So the reason why I like this one is because it's in a topical location. It's in a location that's in the news a lot. So I thought I'd start with this one because you can see the scale where we're at. If I zoom out, you can see that the Fertile Crescent is located in this central area of the world. And I can also use different layers. So in this one, hope this works. Yes, okay. Google Streets, it kind of brings in another technology, Google Satellite, and you can get different bits of information when you're using the different layers. So in the description is the same instructions. And usually what we do is when you create a scenario for students, we create the description in the create the instructions in the description so that when they duplicate the map for themselves, they get the instructions with the map. But that's one way of doing it. You can also just assign without a sample map. So this one here, what's interesting about this is that I had to do quite a lot of research to find these different locations, right? And since it's topical, I wanted to find out if there were any locations down here. And there is. It turns out there was a site in 3rd century BC that was right by this area here, which is in the news, the Strait of Hormuz. I wanted to find this area and I researched it and I found out that it was exactly at this location. I got some information and I put it at this location. But I was here, and I wanted to see like, well, this is it. What does it look like? So I started like zooming in, right? And I wanted to see like maybe I could see a boat or something. Wouldn't that be cool? And I thought maybe if I could get close down here and could get a view from here, I could see out what it was like. And if you click this little bonhomme up here on the top left, you get Google Street View. And Google Street View is built into Cartograf. And I can actually make points with the Google Street View. So I was zooming into this area and I was trying to get as close as possible to a view that I could look out and see what was going on, maybe like when the picture was taken, which was probably, a year ago or something like that. So I got this and I was able to take a look. And I was able to go and use Street View to take a look. So this is me doing my personal journey, trying to see if there's any boats out there. And look, so I was going down the road and I thought, well, maybe I'll look up here. And the weirdest thing appeared. Can you see what that is? Right here?
Yeah, it's a park.
It's a park. So this is a park for kids to play while they're looking out over the Strait of
Uh-huh.
Hormuz, where right now there's all these warships going on.
Mm.
So, I thought, wow. And I will never forget that. So this is me personalizing that experience of putting that point in that area and also using scale at a very high resolution. Whoops, sorry, I still have the street view on, and that's as far as it goes. So that's scale. An example of a learning scenario and in social sciences. This is another example of scale. This is the same time period. This was another teacher, Daniel you might know him, Daniel Martin. He did this when he was a teacher. His thing was whenever we teach something like Mesopotamia, it's like nobody else exists, right? It's like that's the only part of the world we talk about. So he did cartograph maps in order to show people what else exists at a different scale around the world. And this is around a similar time period to the times of the first towns and the Neolithic age, but it's around the world. So you can see various farming kingdoms, various nomadic hunter-gatherers, and he would show this to his students and was able to communicate at a different scale, but during the same time period. So I thought that was an interesting example of how a teacher could use scale and use cartograph to communicate something different. So science. Science, same idea. You can always use these procedural concepts of location, scale, development, and territory, but in different ways. Like in science, the location might be the biomes and the climate and the different the areas of the world, how it might be different in those areas, those biological areas. Scale, you've got local, regional, global as well, that influence those biomes. Development, human action impacts the action of the on the environment, and territory, how you characterize that biome, the natural characteristics, the climate, the vegetation, and so on. So I don't have any science mapping scenarios, and I'd like to get some up there. But I do have one that kind of falls in the same category. Have to do with territories at risk, agricultural territories. And it fits this human action, explain the impacts of human action on the environment. And I wanted to show you that. So I'm just going to go right. So this particular activity asks students to to look at the images, to choose a territory, and then to go in and respond to these questions that are put right on the map. So I'm not going to go in through the whole scenario, but I want to show you something that's interesting, and I'll mention. So I'll zoom into this area here. So what they've done is they've asked people to zoom into the different areas and get some information. And this one is on the center vert. So building a sort of a strip of green to try to prevent the desert from expanding. And oh, this one doesn't work. It should work. I guess the video's been shut off. But you can actually put videos inside the points as well. So that one I need to fix. But what's neat is, of course, is you can see when you go to satellite, you can actually, see the green areas being developed and so on. So, and you can also zoom in. So this is my personalization of it. I was like zooming into here, and I was again trying to find some street view, seeing if there were street view images anywhere, and so I was over here, and I was trying to get to the edge of the desert, and I was trying to find what if I could look out on the desert. And of course, it's kind of gradual, and you can't see the difference, but it was fun for me. But when I first discovered this activity, I was amazed by this point here. And it allows me to talk a little bit about Google Satellite as an application. Okay, this point here, can you guess what that is?
Well, it looks like there might be sheep or something, or some sort
Oh,
of
good.
animal, but I'm not too sure what the animal is. But
Wow.
because they're gathered together in the shape of them,
Okay. Well,
yeah.
this is a well. The point is a little bit
So
off.
well, okay.
Okay. And the image, when I went to show this, get ready for the workshop, this image had changed
Ah,
because the satellite image was
mm,
changed. And I
that's not
was really upset because there was something really neat there before. And so I wanted to find it. And I went to another mapping application. And this is typical of using Cartograf, is you'll bounce around between different mapping applications for whatever your need is.
fun.
But Cartograf is really good for putting the stuff and keeping it and working it. So what I did was I used Google Satellite. And Google
Yeah.
Satellite, there is a time frame. And I could look back and find the old photograph, which
And can you
wasn't.
show me that? Because I know how to do it on Google Satellite, but I'm curious how to do
Yeah.
it in this.
We can try to do it right now, but sorry, you want to do it on Google Satellite?
Well, that's it. I'm curious, like if the students are exploring the change over time and then also like human effects on the territory and how that, things might have disappeared or appeared. So I like that
Yeah,
idea that they can go back in time or ahead or current or whatever. Yeah.
yeah. This is the image. I'll try to find it. I should
Neat.
have I should have put a link actually.
It was only
Uh,
2 years ago.
yeah, I know. Can you see what can you
Yeah, so you can see the animals are in a different spot or their shadows. I guess it was at a
but can
different
you see
moment
what
in the
those
day.
animals are?
They might be camels.
Yeah, because the shadow. The
Yeah.
shadow is very pronounced. but I'm going to get going. But I just wanted to show you the timeline part. It's here,
Mm.
I think. Is it here? No,
Oh,
that's
yes.
measure. No, that's measure.
Can't remember.
Uh,
It's the go
Show
back and find
historical
now.
imagery. There it
Mm.
is.
Neat.
Okay, so there you can go. So that's a good use for Google Earth. So you could
Mhm.
take the images and you could, you could use Google Earth to grab different images, and you could set them up on your cartograph to show what it
Mhm.
was like in other time periods. But so
Mhm.
Google Earth is really good for viewing stuff like that, but it's not great for mapping in terms of the points and things the way
Mhm.
it does. It's pretty good. It has pluses and minuses. So there's a good example of one, maps changing over time. Two,
Mhm.
how interesting locations can represent sign change in terms of the human action on the planet, and you can imagine how science has lots of those examples. Um, so science. I wanted to show something else about languages. Now, again, I'm using the procedural concepts idea from the RICIA workshop. Um, they're different for languages. When your location, you could be locating actions of characters, events, buildings. Um, Keep in mind that for art, you have the artist, you have the people in the artwork, you have the buildings that are represented in the art as well. So I didn't put art, but you could see how that works as well. Scale, local, regional, global development. The human actions are happening in a territory. So when the story is going on, it's happening in a territory, and you can visualize the territory that's taking place in, and the sort of narrative universe that's the what's going on in terms of the story. So there are a few examples on the website um, that have to do with ELA. This comes out of a project done with a few teachers where they wrote these activities. None of these, the first three are part of the ELA, and the fourth was done by a French as a second language teacher. None of these have sample maps. They're all instructions. They're all this is what you could do with the application. And
Mhm.
so I just wanted to show you this one because I thought it was a good example of moving from one territory to another. So this was the at Odanek ship, I believe, when they were or group when they were protesting against the James Bay dams, and the task is to map and locate where they went. So you've got areas in James Bay, you've got the Cree villages that are part of the Cree communities, and you have some
Mhm.
key spots in their route. And there's no map that comes with this. It's just instructions on how you can do it. You can use. I noticed she put. You can use Google Maps to find some locations. Sometimes it's Google Maps is better for finding the locations, even though there is a actual find tool in Cartograph. But I wanted to point out that there's other tools that are involved. That could come into play. This is one that I don't know if you've seen before, called nativeland.ca. There's big disclaimers on this that the maps are always a work in progress, but they're really quite good, and they give you a really good sense of which peoples overlapped and
Nice.
and which territories. Well, it's mostly which peoples because there's no borders in the strict sense of the word. So in those time periods, so you can see that in this area you've got coastal Cree, you've got northern Eastern Cree, but then you also see that the Inuit are uh, are in here, and they've got this categorized as Namiviatit, which is basically the idea that all the Inuit in the north are these peoples, but then there's a Nuktatuk speaking locally to Quebec. So you learn, and then there's the Innu over here, and so on. So you could see that the story is going through. Well, I'll zoom in again. Oops. The story of that voyage is going from Cree territory, but it's going down through Algonquin territory and coming towards Mohawk, Ganyakahage territory. So a tool like this can really help for context for that particular activity, that voyage. So that's a good example of moving in and out of a different mapping technology. Also, I have a well, I'll skip that. Well, no, I'll do it quickly because it's an Inuit one that Stacy did. I wanted to show this because this is an example of an elementary activity in the north. And the goal of this activity, as you'll see in the instructions, is to note things like provincial parks in the area with links to the provincial parks, the population of different villages, how it changed between 1981 and 2006. And some of these have videos associated with them. So these are the people that talking about the town of Cortec, and this is my town. Woohoo, Salovit. That's where I lived. And so the task, oh, there I am. I forgot I lent her my picture. That's me in 1991. Yeah, there I am. In Salovit. That's me there. So yeah, that's a surprise. That's funny. But so I wanted to mention this because it's an elementary one, but it's also one where part of the instructions ask students to use content that's already on Learn. So there's this whole section for Inuit on the elementary site, and you've got aspects of territory that they can read about, and then they can go and do the mapping scenario based on that. And that's pretty key. The idea that every learning unit or learning scenario has location, and you can fit mapping scenarios into it. You can use it to contextualize when you're presenting, but there's always something for students to do. So she came up with this scenario where they they look at the individual communities, and you can this I know from a fact that this one is quite, it goes really, really close. Like that's the school. I can even see where I was living if I wanted to. I remember somewhere over there. And you can see things like the fact that the airport is far away from the school. And that was one of the activities is to check out the airports. That was one of her questions, to check out the airports. So yeah, so that's a good example of an elementary activity where this again, I could be using native land to see the Inuit language in that area and what other languages are in that area. And you can see there's several of them. There's I listed 3, but I think there's a few more that have to do with Indigenous territory, for which it'd be good to use other sources to compare to confirm what you're looking at and give you context. This map was done. This is the one where I said the teacher did not teach Cartograf at all. Okay, she had 30 students in like secondary 3 in Français langue seconde, and in French as a second language. And she wanted the students to visualize the area using descriptions, images, photographs, and understand the context of that area. And basically, what that she had to do, they had to pick an area and do an itinerary. So the big icon, the eye, would be the introduction to it and the plan of the trip. So they'd have to write up an itinerary for this region, and then the little numbers of the area that they chose were day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6. And so they created this travel pamphlet that had all the locations mapped with images, with voice, and they could present it. Now, I can no longer access this map. I used to be able to access it, but another thing about Cartograf is that if you don't use it for 2 years, your account gets deleted. And that's okay because we don't want the student stuff in there. It's get in, do it, get out. The students don't need to. In fact, I sometimes say after a few weeks, when you're absolutely sure, they should probably delete it because they're going to forget it. But we delete all the accounts after 2 years if they haven't used it. And I can't zoom into this area because it was really impressive, this map. Basically, the way it works, I won't have another chance to explain it, but if I make a map of going to the Bahamas, and I finished my map, finished my travel pamphlet, and I opened this tab right here called the Share tab, and I put in a code, like a secret password that nobody can duplicate. And you do the same code on your map, I see your map.
Mm.
So but I can't edit it. I can't do anything to it, but I can toggle it off and on, but I can see it overlapped. So that's a way for teachers to collect all the materials together and say, "Oh, you're all done? Okay, everybody put this code in," and I can see or group one, you all put this code in. Group two, you put this code in. And then the teacher just opens another map and puts the same code in, and she can see what the students have done. And there's no way whatsoever to edit the other. They're not on this, they're not the same map. They're on different maps, but you're just seeing them on top of each other. Kulovic. Yes, it was Katowic. Yes, I also taught a while. I was just looking at Candace's comment. Yeah, it's really fun to see those northern places with mapping tech. So yeah, so ELA, very good. There's another example from ELA. This is the book. This is from a book called The Chrysalids when I was a kid. And I found this on part of the idea with location, this is about location as opposed to territory, is locating on a map to better understand the narrative, to understand what's going on. And in the chrysalids, it's this community in the future that's after a nuclear war, where they treat people that are mutations as that they kick them out into this area called the Badlands, and then further away it gets worse and worse, and a big part of it is trying to figure out where this is, and it's in Newfoundland, and the towns are all different names, but they're similar. And the way they describe going south and going where the nuclear bomb was dropped, you can tell that it's in the States, and it gets more livable as you go forward. And what shocked me about this is not only that I could figure it out. I loved that when I was in grade 9, but I'll spoil the story a little bit, because at the end they have to try to get to this place, which is really far. It turns out to be New Zealand, which is the other context. And this is somebody did a map of it, and this is on Scribble Maps. I don't know if they did they map it? No, they didn't do it. I saw somebody else had done it. Anyway, one of the characters says, "It's okay, I missed the plane. I'll go the other way." And I'm like, "Oh my God. Do they know? They don't know that the other way is the ocean and all the way around the world." So location really meant something. And this was the example I did with the class that was doing location for ELA. Not sure if you recognize this story, but it was also one that in Ontario everybody reads. And I used a couple other tools to find this, but this takes place in the Congo, but it starts in London by the Thames.
Mm.
And there's the title of the book, Heart of Darkness. And what's neat about this is, well, this was me demonstrating that you could put the author's location here. This is where the author was born. This is where the author lived. These are some couple key locations in the book. So that's what they ended up doing. I actually did find another person had done this much more detail. This was on Argus. Somebody had done the same type of thing in much more detail. It took a ton of work to find out all the locations up the river, like that, because he goes up the river in the Congo. And but I wanted to show another one. Let me see if I can. Is it this word? So that was useful to find other maps available. But this is another. Oh, where'd it go? This is another interesting technology. This is an old map collection. So you'll find like maps from all these old maps, hundreds of thousands of old maps, and you can zoom in on them, you can use them, but it has this amazing feature that is pretty neat, where you can search the text that appear on maps. Oh, didn't find it. I should have figured out. Oh no, I did find some. Okay, so
Ooh.
this is that place in the Congo on old maps. And you can sort of tell how old they are by scanning over them, and you get a look, and it's still searching. So if you have an old location, and these are often locations that have changed names, right? So that's a newer map. So this map here, whoops, let's see if I can click on it. So you can go and look at where these locations are. So sometimes this location is in a book somewhere, but it doesn't appear on any map. So you're really having trouble locating it. But this map collection has all these old maps and is cataloged all these old maps by the text in them. So I could find that's how I found out where this location was to put on my map. Pretty cool, eh? So there's an example of going in and out. Of course, that could be used really well for history, because you're actually getting the older maps. So, um, oh yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about AI. Actually, a couple more slides about AI. Obviously, these days, AI can help a lot in terms of finding the location. But it's not how I started. This is something I often would start my workshops on mapping with this idea of where would you place this Roman coin, and we go through a discussion. And it could be where it could be in Rome, it could be it could be where the coin was found. It could be the Roman roads, and there's an example of Roman commerce where the commerce was. Um, I found this on a site because I was looking for something. I said, but Rome was here too. Did they ever find any coins here? And they were in Carthage. I don't know if you know of Carthage, but I was always fascinated by Carthage. It's in Tunisia, where Tunisia is now, and the major wars. And if they had won, history for us would have been completely different. But for 100 years, they were fighting each other, and they eventually ended up losing to Rome. And so the Romans were there. So I found a coin. So I started saying, well, okay, well, where was this coin? Uh, I wanted to find more information about the coin. So with AI, was able to help me. It was able to look at the coin and read the transcripts and tell me who the emperor was, um, and find more information about this type of coin. It was able to tell me about the type of coin. So I said, okay, got the name of the emperor. I searched the emperor. I thought, oh, I found this emperor. I started reading more information about him. I said, oh, well, he was at that point there was a Roman capital in Trier, which is in Belgium, or no, is it Belgium or Lux or Germany? It's right at Luxembourg. I think it's around that area, Luxembourg, Belgium. And I said, oh, well, I'll put the coin there because the emperor was from there. And then I went back to AI and I started asking it again about the coin, and it was saying something about another location, Milan. And I said, and that was the capital at the time when this emperor was in place. And I said, well, why? I thought he was in Trier. And he says, no, that was Maximissus, not Maximinian, and there's a confusion. So it was actually in Milan, this emperor. So I could have put it in Milan, but I thought I like to put it the idea of putting it in Carthage, but I didn't want to put it where it was found because that was impossible to find. I wanted to ask about the mint. Where's the mint? And you know, I ended up finding out where it was, and ended up putting it in a place. Well, I thought I had the link to show you, but I don't have it. And anyway, I ended up putting it in Carthage, and it told me exactly where the mint was. Not just like approximately, but it said the mint was either here or here. It was in the old town, so I was able to zoom in. And of course, now it's built over and there's different things there, but that's where it was. So this is my personal experience for finding the location. And AI played a really interesting role. That's actually the chat that you can go see, this sort of back and forth, me trying to figure out where this went. So, but when I did it, it was completely mine. My knowledge that I accumulated was mine, because it was from the angle that I took it with this conversation with AI. So that was a good example. Um, so we're almost done. Just a couple of resources to point out. What's a mapping scenario? there's a good example. We did a coffee break on this, on two cartograph scenarios, uh, in particular on this one, which was done by a consultant. She said, okay, if I'm going to use this and show my teachers this, I need to get it. So I need to log in, hit new map, go to the area I want, create the map, which is a created map will be here. I need to write instructions for them. I need to put a sample point and then get them to copy it. So once she did this, she saw how it would work for a scenario. So her idea is that to read about, establish some facts about the James Bay project, read some videos, identify some communities, situate space and time, and here is a sample to see what's happening. She gave a sample of one area, Legrand Station, with some resources for them to learn, and they're to copy the map and put another location and analyze that in the context in the same
Hmm.
way she did. And what was neat was in the teacher's area, she wrote up a little, what are the essential elements of a scenario document, which I'll try to show you, but I can't because it's in another window. I can't show it to you. How can I show it to you? Anyway, basically what I said, it's a little procedural document, a Word document that says you should do this, you should do that, you should put in the instructions, which buttons to press. These are for elementary
Mhm.
kids. And so that's a really helpful resource for you to understand, and a recommendation to actually try to build one, a little sort of scenario. And I just wanted to also point out in that same webinar is this. This is an example of a bunch of scenarios related to an LES. Now, pretty much everything we do has location. So I did this LES a couple of years ago on imperialism and in Africa. And what I did was in the actual LES, there's a spot where it says, stop. You can use Cartograf to map this situation. But but it's a fairly long LES and there's lots of things going on in it. So what I
Mhm.
did was I actually used AI to scan the whole LES and say, where could I use mapping scenarios in this LES? And it came up with three really interesting ideas. Uh, when it talks about the Berlin Conference and divided peoples, I could map the peoples that were in Africa at the time. So students could map the Berlin, how it cut up Africa, but they could also individually, like this group could do that one, and then they should share the map or whatever, or they could all do it. And these are some examples, but the students could also look through the document collection themselves and find the examples. And you could say find five examples, so a couple options. There's a section where it talks about zones of exploitation, where they were doing rubber, where they were doing diamonds, gold, and so on. That could be a mapping scenario. They could. There were different uprisings in Workbook 2. There were different resistance movements. They could find out where those happened and map that. The students could do it, or the teacher could do it just to show where they are. And the last part of that LES was to research a country that was affected by colonization that have people in Canada and to map where these centers are and where people are in Canada. There's different community centers in Canada for these different peoples. So what's interesting about that is the idea that AI can help you, um, find out where you could be using Cartograf. So what I did was I took different programs, and you can look at this, and I actually, ran the CCQ program in, and it gave me this whole different options for how to use different mapping scenarios. And I took the response and I fed it through Notebook, and I got these notebooks that I haven't checked and edited yet, but they're pretty cool. They've got like the mapping scenarios mapped out, and then they've got one where you could do a public versus private. You can talk about community resource networks. You could talk about I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And we're finishing up, but I'll tell you, it was pretty amazing. The amount of times just in one shot that you could find connections for science, pollution pathways, urban heat, climate migration risks, all kind of connections that are localized for the different programs. I did one for FLS that was pretty neat as well. And I did not do one for art, but I've got
Don't
two
worry
more.
about it. But now it makes you think a little bit, right?
Yeah,
Because there are, oh, I can't remember what it's called. It's like Google is a museum or something, and it allows you to, I don't know, I have to remember. I guess they did this during COVID, but I do th see potential in, having students locate either like I don't know, a different sculptural piece or different museums around the world, and also which famous artworks are there, or even where artists lived. They often traveled at some point. Yeah. No,
yeah,
I enjoy this, and if I have any questions, I will definitely reach out to you because I see a lot of different potentials, and often our elementary teachers are looking ways of getting out of the book, and making
yeah,
it more interactive. And this is just, aside from just Minecraft, they tend to maybe know about that, but I don't think they really know about this
yeah.
here.
Well, this is before you go, I just want to I just pretend this is an art image. Pretend this is an image
Yeah.
that is a painting that was
Yeah.
located in the Louvre. See this little button here? When
Where are you
you're
pointing? Oh,
there's this
yes, that
button,
button, the
and
draw
then way
button.
down here there's edit.
Edit. Okay.
Edit enters the whole card. Edits the
Yeah.
whole
Yeah,
card,
yeah,
and you can
yeah.
add more images. But this little button allows me to draw on things.
Oh, neat.
So I could mark it up.
Yeah, you can mark it up and
Yeah.
add like little,
And
like
this
an
was,
arrow to point to something, let's say.
yeah, exactly. So that was the reason why this whole thing was set up in the first place. It's basically, think of it like a document collection
Hmm.
over top of location and views.